Good day doodlers and welcome to Draw Cartoons. Today we're going to be looking at how to draw legs. We're going to be focusing on two very common angles, the front and the side, which are deceptively difficult to draw, but I found a way to break them down into simpler shapes, and I'll be showing you those exact shapes and guides as we go today. Now, to fully understand how this is done, you really do need to watch as much of the video as you can, so don't be skipping ahead to the end, because you really won't be helping yourself and you're going to miss all the best tips that way. And if you do end up finding this video helpful, it will be great if you click that like button down there and ensure that you subscribe to this channel for more videos just like this one in the future. Alright, let's get started. Now, just briefly before we get started, it's worth understanding a few things about the anatomy of legs. If you really simplify things, legs are composed of 5 very important key parts. Going from the top to the bottom, you've got the pelvis, and the pelvis links directly to the very top of your femur. That's basically your thigh bone. These are the largest bones in the human body, and note, very importantly, how they connect to the pelvis. It's basically connecting at an angle. It's diagonal here. It's not a straight line. It's not perpendicular lines meeting. No, we've got like a diagonal sort of angle here. So that's worth keeping in mind when you actually come to drawing legs. Then obviously below this you've got the knee, the bone of which is called the patella. This sits obviously at more or less the midpoint of your leg's height. And then underneath that you've got what is basically the shin, composed of the tibia and fibula. And right at the very bottom obviously are your feet. Now the reason I'm showing you this is to give you a really quick basic understanding of the shapes of legs. It might seem obvious, but if you have this picture in mind before diving into what we're just about to do, it will help you to understand some of the curves and some of the shapes that we're about to draw. So with that little bit of background information out of the way, we can get started. So I like to draw a horizontal line just along the very top of where I want to draw my legs, because this helps me to understand where the hip is. So for example, the character's torso would be up here, it's off screen. So this is basically placing the very top of the pelvis of the character. And if you think it's useful, you can draw a horizontal line along where you want the feet to end. This is the floor. I'm actually going to label this so it's very obvious that this is the floor. So your leg's height is going to take place between this line, obviously, and between this one. So with that out of the way, I would recommend that you draw a triangle underneath this to signify an actual shape of the pelvis. I find legs a lot easier to draw when they're actually attached to something. If the leg's kind of floating in space, it's a bit harder because the legs attach diagonally to the body like this. They kind of come out of the pelvis. So I just personally find it's very useful to get this upside down triangle drawn first. So we'll start with this leg. We can't draw 2 legs at the same time unless you're ambidextrous and have 2 pencils. And that's not me. So try and figure out the center of this line here, this line that we just drew. Try and figure out the center of it. It's about here, isn't it? Roughly. If you think about there compared to there, that's more or less the center. Now once you've figured out the center of that line, however you've drawn it, try and draw a straight line. Use a ruler if you want to. I'm using software, which is basically hacking. I'm Hackerman right now. And just draw it to the bottom where you placed the floor. Now what's the importance of drawing this line? Well, this helps us to figure out the shape of the leg, and I'll show you why. The big toe of the foot wants to kind of sit next to this line all by itself. You want to just block out the shape of a big toe there. Don't make it too big. It's only a small, for now, rectangular shape, pretty simple, and that sits to the side of that line, and the rest of the toes, they can have their own wider rectangle on this side, again resting on that floor. So we're actually starting with the toes here, and now we want to cut this line in half as well to identify where the knee is going to be. So this is roughly the midpoint, roughly, and sitting on top of this is the knee. So the knee is a bit more to the left, or our left I should say, than the right. So just draw an egg shape that kind of gets cut through by that line there. Now here's another guide for you that I think is super useful. You want to start with the side of the hip here, because hips never lie, and you want to draw a line that curves out and down like this. I'm going to very carefully etch out this shape slowly so it can make sense to you. And it looks like we're just going straight for it. It looks like we're going ahead and drawing the leg, but we're not. We're actually drawing another guideline, and this guideline cuts through the bottom of this egg right here. See how it's just touching the egg that we drew? it goes through the original straight line that we drew, but it doesn't go very far past it. As a matter of fact, pretty much as soon as we've gone through it, we want to be curving back towards the line, going through it again, and we're joining up with the toes that we just drew, and we end up with this wavy sort of sigmoid shape. It starts here, it curves out like this, goes right underneath the knee and out, but only a little bit, and then it comes back and it touches the pinky toe, the very smallest toe. And you're probably thinking, well, legs aren't bendy like this. Well, if you look at the silhouette of a leg, it kind of is actually. I mean, legs they all come in different shapes and sizes, but as a rule of thumb, an athletic leg, you know, the kind of leg that you'll be building on life drawings or on superheroes or even on just anyone you want, really, your characters, you can draw a thigh that comes out like this and a inner calf that comes out like this, and it'll be generally anatomically correct so long as you're doing this pose. So now it's basically about just adding in the rest of the shapes. So I like to start here. What you want to do is, as you reach the knee, you want to actually draw a bulge out like that. And it's more or less the same kind of size as the knee. Think about the size of this egg that we drew for the knee. By the way, a note to make, kneecaps are not made of eggs. And it's like a bulge that comes out here. And it ends more or less where the bottom of the egg is as well. Look at that. It's more or less level. When you've done that, you want to draw the calf, or the outer calf, I should say. Now it's more significant. It's a bit bigger than the inner calf, which is there. So you want to draw it out, and as you come towards the foot, you want to draw another little bump out like this. Maybe not quite that dramatic, just a bit more slight than that. That is the ankle bone, and there are ankle bones on both sides. So you can actually come down from this guideline here. Again, we're using that middle line, this big tall line we drew in the middle, as almost like a line of symmetry. Not quite, but it's a good idea to regard it like that because it will kind of help you keep on track. I guess it's a line of symmetry that's got a bit more weight on this side, right? The outer side has more weight on it generally, which you'll come to see in a moment as we draw the inside leg now. The inside leg is a little bit more complicated. You don't want to start drawing it at this point here. You actually want to start drawing it a bit sooner, and it might help you if you identify the midpoint between here and here, which is about here. So once you've figured out that midpoint, you want to draw again a bulge that comes out only a very, very slight curve there, and then another small curve here. As we get towards the knee, you can add a little bump here underneath it. So I've gone a bit over the top with these curves. You might not want to pronounce them quite as much as I did, but the musculature is kind of the same. You've got a big one up here, and then a smaller one there, and a small bump here. There's all kinds of bumps going on in your knee, and you've got a little one there. And then you can basically join this up with your guideline. And voila, there we go. That didn't take us too long. We've got a pretty nice looking leg here. So what I'm going to do to help you guys out is I'm going to just erase away the lines that I do not want. So I'm going to get rid of all these guidelines now, so it's a bit more obvious what the end result actually looks like. Again, just kind of erasing away guidelines here. Going to keep a few around the knee because the knee gives the knee a bit more of a shape. Okay, I'm also going to hide the preview underneath this. There we go. So there, we've got a pretty nice looking leg, if I say so myself. And obviously you might want to divide these up into the correct shapes. The toes down here, bit of a toenail there. But there you go. You got a nice leg kind of facing towards the viewer now. So I hope that was useful. If you're feeling like challenging yourself, you could try and do it on the other side. Try and keep it nice and symmetrical. It is easier said than done, but just rewind the tutorial, watch it again, and basically just do it backwards. Remember your midpoints, you know, this one here, drawing that big kind of sigmoid curve down. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, you guys are probably not going to nail it on your first try. If you did, then kudos, you know, congratulations. Very, very hard. But give it a few watches, give it a few tries, do your best, and you'll get the hang of it in no time. Now, drawing a leg from the side I'd say it's not quite as easy as drawing a leg from the front, but drawing a leg from the side does allow you to get away with a little bit more exaggeration, which means more flexibility in the curves of the leg. Now, just to start, I've drawn the hip, or at least a line for more or less where the hip's going to be. It's not going to look exactly like a straight line, and a line to mark the foot. Now, the reason I've done this, from the very center of your bottom line, go up And just draw a straight line from that to the line that you drew for the hip. So long as you're more or less in the center of your floor line, that's completely fine. But again, doesn't demand perfect accuracy. But what you want to do here is, again, you want to identify the midpoint of the line that you just drew, which is about here. Okay, so keep that in mind because we're going to use that very, very soon. Now, the best way I could think of how to compose the curves of a leg would be to start about here, curve a line slightly out. Now, when it comes to legs, it is all about the very, very subtle curves. It's very easy to overdo this. So we're talking a very, very slight curve that comes down towards that midpoint. And right as you approach that midpoint, draw a very small bump out. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even come out. As a matter of fact, this really kind of just straightens up and then curves down into the guideline. It actually merges with the guideline. Now this becomes the shin. The guideline essentially becomes the shin of your leg here. And you want to bring it all the way down to about here, which is the foot, and just draw a diagonal line straight down. More or less this angle. I mean, you can do it more stout if you want. If you want like a really short foot, that's looking more like a hoof at the moment. You don't really want that unless you're drawing like a centaur or something. So make sure it's got a bit of length to it. And then you can draw just a small bump on the end to signify that, yes, we're going to draw some toes there later. This is just a sketch, so we're really more interested in building out the shapes of the leg, so we're not really going for some details now. Now, you're probably wondering, well, how on earth do I do the back? Because there's a lot of curving going on here. Well, I'm going to show you something that's going to help. So keep in mind the trajectory of the curve that you drew for this leg, okay? Now, it can be tricky, but it comes with practice. About here, you want to try and mimic the trajectory of the curve that you were drawing. So notice how it's the same angle as that. Now this is just a guideline, so again it does not have to be perfect, but it helps you a lot as you're coming out now into drawing the back of the calf. You're actually drawing the calf here in the guideline. So bring this out and then curve it towards the point there where you began to draw the very, very top of the foot where it joins at the ankle. And that will help you get the right kind of curvature for the back of the leg. So I'm gonna do that again because it's a bit sloppy, and really I just want to show you again. So again, we're just curving, very, very gently curving, and we're just aiming it back for the very top of the foot there. Now, if you're wondering how to draw the heel, what you can do is essentially treat it like it's bouncing off, like it's deflecting off that point where they join, and bring it down to the floor at more or less the same angle as that. And what you can do now to compose the very, very back of the leg here where the heel begins, you can flick off this and just gently curve it down to meet the line that you just drew. It's all about these very subtle, very small curves, and it's easy to go over the top and really over curve them, trust me, I know. But from practice you'll learn that less is more when it comes to this kind of thing. Now, we're going to draw the very, very top of the back of the thigh. We're just going to draw the bottom of a buttock here. The upper part would obviously be up here. And all it is a small bump. We're more interested in the back of the actual thigh here, which straightens out and curves down nicely into right that point there where the top of the knee is, right? You want to be curving out by the time you've reached the top of the knee. So just visualize a straight line here. Draw it on your own if it's helpful. Just go ahead and draw that, because it might help you to understand where it begins to kind of flick out. But this bump here is important. This bump is something very often missed by artists of all skill levels. There is a muscle here, and it's got such a subtle curve to it, but it does exist. So bottom of the buttock, it begins to just kind of flick back out before going back in towards the back of the knees. Very, very subtle curves. Hopefully the guidelines here that I've drawn, this kind of this sigmoid kind of curve here and this straight line here, hopefully they help you to make sense of it. It can be quite hard, but that's the best I've got for now. And well, the great thing about drawing a leg from this angle is that you don't really have to draw the other one, because we can't really see the other leg. This leg is kind of hiding the leg that would be behind it. So you're kind of done at this point. But if you do feel like challenging yourself, feel free to do this again, but reverse it. Draw it so, you've got the toes pointing this way, and you've got like, try and mirror it. So rewind, watch this bit again, and try and do it backwards. But yeah, there you go. There is a sideways leg. And there we go, I hope that was useful. It's understandable if you have problems while working on this, so feel free to just go ahead and rewind and rewatch it as much as you need to get it in. You can, of course, slow down the video as well if you need to, because I know that helps me sometimes when I'm trying to learn some new stuff as well. Anyway, if you did enjoy the video, please click that like button below. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications for more tutorials just like this one in the future. Until next time.